Hello and welcome. Would you like to learn how I make my Wonky Log Cabin? I'm Angela Davis and I'm the Forum Quilter, where I share, care, and create with you. Join me as I use old newspaper as foundation to make this crazy log cabin. There's a couple of tips with making this quilt, and the first thing that you want to think about is before you use your newspaper, you want to iron it. And be sure to use a dry iron on a very low heat setting. And what this does is it'll set the ink so that it won't rub off on your hands. Now, a little bit did rub off on my hands, but not much, because you want to be sure that that ink doesn't rub off on your fabric as well. Once you have your pages ironed, you want to cut. Now, I wanted mine to be approximately 12.5 inches cut. Well, when I started measuring, I realized that the width of the newspaper was just a little more than about 25 inches. So I was able to cut my newspaper into quarters. So instead of cutting them exactly at 12.5 inches square, I just cut the newspaper into 4 parts, and it was approximately the size that I wanted. And since I'm doing a scrappy, crazy log cabin, I'm not really concerned that they're going to be precisely cut at 12.5 inches. This is a very fun, very asymmetrical log cabin. This is a great way to use up your scraps, and you don't have to follow the traditional plan, having light and dark on each side. If you do, that's quite all right, because you can see the pattern better. But if you don't, as in this one, that's all right too. And as you can see in this one, I didn't even follow the regular pattern, where I did 2 on one side, then 2 on the other, and continued circulating around. On this one, I sort of started in one direction and then started in another direction, then completed on the other side. So I had a lot of fun with these blocks. Also, as you're working with these blocks, it is important to keep a 1/4 inch seam allowance. But let's say you have a piece of fabric that maybe is fraying a little bit. It's a great way to use up scraps. But as we all know, as scraps get jumbled and rearranged in our trays and our boxes and our small plastic organizers, sometimes they start to fray a little bit. So if that's the case, be sure to increase your seam allowance to 1/3 of an inch if you need to. on this particular block, as you can see, I have a patch right here. And that's because this piece right here, this fleshy peach color, this edge right here wasn't straight. So instead of straightening it, I just went ahead and sewed it on. And I thought when I started the next piece, I covered it all. And when I pressed it open, I realized I had a gap here. So instead of taking this strip off and realigning it, I just covered it with a piece of patchwork. And that's the great thing about this Crazy Log Cabin. If you make a mistake, you don't have to necessarily rip it out. You can just add a piece on top of it, and it just becomes part of the process. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is have fun with it. You know, I could have done 2 hearts. You know, I could have done stars there. And I just decided to go ahead and continue with the strippy design, and I put in a rectangle. So have fun with it. Have fun with it. And I think it looks good. Well, it's going to add to the design element of this particular style. So that would be, I think, my last tip. So to recap, you want to be sure to just to, you know, go over things a little bit right here in the middle of the video. You want to be sure to press your newspaper. You want to use a short stitch length on your machine to keep those stitches tight so that when you take out the newspaper, you're not ripping out stitches. Now you have all your blocks put together, and it's time to remove the paper backing. And since we used a very small stitch length on our machine, you shouldn't have to worry about when you pull out the papers, will it pull out the threads? So what I do is I sort of start in the corner like that. And then I usually grab, this is a tapestry needle, and I'll just sort of start scoring different parts of the paper. And this helps give you a place to grab, especially when you're in the middle. And then you just start tearing. And it doesn't take very long. How I got the idea to use newspaper for the backing years ago when I started quilting. A lot of the quilting shows were on public broadcasting TV, and I tried searching it, could not find it. I don't remember what show it was on. And I don't remember the guest speaker, nothing. All I remember is they were discussing vintage quilts. And they were discussing this particular technique of using newspaper as backing. And the speaker, the guest speaker, said that upon evaluating an old quilt, parts of the old quilt had, you know, some fraying and some damage to the fabric. And on examination, they realized there was newspaper behind the back of the quilt. And they realized that the maker used newspaper as the foundation. And so the speaker was demonstrating the technique. And I was always fascinated by that. And the speaker said that you can pre-cut your squares or rectangles any way you want for your foundation, or you could do what the original quilter did and use just 1/2 of the newspaper to create the quilt. And I always remember that. And I thought, one day I'm going to make one of those paper-backed quilts. And here I am, sharing it with you. And this is just a fun project. It uses up a lot of strips. Now, I don't know about you, but I still have a lot of leftover strips. I could probably make 3 or 4 more quilts with just what's on my table over here. But it does help reduce your scraps. Okay, so you get the idea. I could go back later and take the rest of those out. And there it is. I'm not worried about this. That'll get trimmed later when I seam it. There it is. If you make a mistake, use that as an opportunity to put in another creative element into the block. But most of all, with this crazy log cabin, have fun with it. Have fun with it when you're using up your scraps. It's a lot of fun to make. It's quick, very quick. All right, so here we are. And I've been rearranging them a little bit all morning, trying to get the right positioning. I think this is how I'm going to set it. I'm very, very pleased with how these crazy log cabins turned out. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, give it a thumbs up and a like. This is a great way to use up scraps. It's fun, it's easy, it's very whimsical. You can choose to do more of a log cabin type and do light and dark on each side, or you can choose to do something very asymmetrical, where maybe you start going around and then you decide, well, maybe I'll work on these strips and then move out this direction. I did that here as well. Make it the way you want it. It's a fun block to do. It's a great way to use up scraps. It's very quick. If I did not work, and I did this strictly on a day where I had nothing planned, I could probably get all 9 of these done in one day. But I would say this is a great weekend project. You could get all of these 9 blocks. I think I got 10 done because I wanted to use one as an example of taking the paper off. Actually, I might make 2 more and make it 3 across and 4 down. You get the idea. But it's very quick and easy to do. And it's mindless. So it's one of those projects where you can just sit and sew and just enjoy the process. And you don't have to overthink it. Just let your mind go and enjoy it. I'm pleased with how it turned out. My name's Angela Davis. I'm the 4am Quilter, where I share, care, and create with you. I hope you have a great week. Give it a thumbs up and a like. Take care. Here's a little hug from Angela. Bye.